Welcome to Melt. I'm Suresh Venkat. Over the next few weeks, Melt will bring you conversations that aim to help marketers and CXOs set strategies and benchmark their endeavours. We're starting off with an extended chat with one of the foremost corporate leaders today, Shiv Shivakumar. Shiv has worked with over 60 brands in his career and has led many business transformations. He's here today to answer questions about strategy, growth, and leadership. Let's get ready to melt with Shiv Shivakumar. Shiv, welcome to Melt.
My pleasure, Suresh.
Let's start with the fundamentals.
Okay.
Now, this word strategy, you've used it quite often in your writings, and it's been used and misused quite often in the world of marketing. So let's start this interview by clarifying what is and what is not strategy.
I think that's a great question. And if you look at the world today, I think it's moved very, very quickly. Very, very quickly. And the old ways of doing strategy don't apply anymore. If I were to give you a simple analogy, in the old days, strategy could be thought of as landing a huge aircraft on the runway. You took your time, you had a consultant, you worked for a year or two, put everything in place, you landed it beautifully. Okay? And then there was a rollout for the next 5-6 years, etc. Mm-hmm. Today's strategy is much more like landing on an aircraft carrier. Okay, it's not two-dimensional, it's three-dimensional. The aircraft carrier also moving. It's not a heavy-duty jet, but it's small, it's nimble, and you need to, if you don't hit it right, you take off again.
And you can try again.
You can try again.
Try again, yeah.
Okay, and keep doing that. So if you look at strategy, a lot of people think that strategy is about a plan, which it is not. To your question, it is not about best practice. It is not about TQM or operational effectiveness measures. It's about next practice. At the end of the day, strategy is about asking yourself, am I getting extra competitiveness? Whatever you do in strategy, you have to be more competitive tomorrow than you were yesterday. Some very good definitions of strategy. For example, the best definition I've heard is Michael Porter, who says strategy is doing different things or doing the same thing differently. So for example, let's take airlines and Indigo vis-a-vis the other airlines. Everybody embarks and disembarks passengers. What does Indigo do? They have a ramp. As a result of it, they save time. That's a very unique activity which gives them competitive advantage on time dimension. Mm-hmm. They are the first airline who are now saying, I'm going to disembark from 3 exits. Mm-hmm. Anybody can do it, but they've thought of it. And that is giving them a time advantage, which is the proposition that they consistently maintain, that my unique advantage is that I am on time more than anybody else. Okay. The other definition of strategy, which you heard many people say, is, where to play and how to win. Mm-hmm. Okay, so those are the kind of things with strategy is about. Strategy is definitely not tactics. But in today's world where things move very, very quickly, and especially in the delivery business, tactics become strategy, strategy become tactics.
No, this part is confusing. Now, we had a clear understanding. This is strategy, that I want to operate an airline. Many people operate an airline, but I'm going to do it differently. I can clearly understand the word strategy there. Right? But the speed at which people disembark and embark seems like a tactical move.
I know, but everybody can do it, but nobody is able to do it.
Okay.
If you look at the delivery business, food delivery, everybody, whether it's the e-commerce, the whole business is on delivery. Mm-hmm. The customer satisfaction, service score, everything is on delivery. In a way, it's a tactical thing that I deliver better than somebody else.
Correct.
Okay, so that becomes the strategy for that kind of an industry. A broader example I can give you is if you look at industries which are 20 years out in their horizon thinking, which is aircraft. Mm-hmm. You look at Airbus versus Boeing. Mm-hmm. Airbus bet on large planes. Mm-hmm. That didn't work. Boeing bet on speed, which is point to point. Mm-hmm. Okay, while Airbus is the larger company, but the strategy in terms of larger planes like A38, etc., hasn't worked.
So Boeing bet right on shorter runs, shorter flights, Absolutely. And smaller planes. So this is a clear strategic difference. We hear the word misuse with tactics a lot. Now can you explain to us what actually tactics means?
Tactics is, in every strategy, you have a plan to achieve that strategy. Mm-hmm. Okay? Plan is not the strategy. I have a plan to achieve that strategy. When you break down that plan into finer elements, those become tactics. Like for example, a consumer promotion in a brand is a tactic. Mm-hmm. It can't be the strategy.
It can't be the strategy.
For example, I worry whenever I see that there are some brands which are permanently 40% off, 50% off, etc.
Correct.
It's no longer,
a tactical
it's neither a tactic nor a strategy. So many people are confused in between those two.
How does one learn to think strategically? You went to IIT Cal and then you went to Wharton. Does one need to go to these top tier schools to learn strategy?
No, I don't think so. See, strategies, the theoretical concepts of strategy are always there. Okay, so you do the big models, etc. Whether it's the BCG model, whether it's a Porter model, whether it's the Blue Ocean strategy, the concepts are all there. The issue is in applying the concepts. So everybody says content is king, Suresh. But to me, context is the kingdom. How do you apply that model in the context that you are in? That's very important. The ability to have good assumptions and stress test your assumptions is very important part of strategy. Believe you me, it's the least understood part. Everybody just assumes India will grow at 6%. What if it grows at 4%? Mm-hmm. What if it grows at 8%? Okay, you don't stress test your assumptions. Next, you're not questioning people to say, hey, what can go well, what can go wrong? You're not looking into the future. Most times what people do is they extrapolate from the past. Mm-hmm. Extrapolating from the past is the most dangerous thing to do in a fast changing world. Mm-hmm. Everything changes overnight virtually. Okay, so if you look at the average life of a company, in 1935, it was 90 years. In 1960, it was 60 years. And today, it's between 12 and 20 years, depending on which data point you look at. Mm-hmm. All the companies who fell off just extrapolated the past. Mm-hmm. So the biggest danger to strategy is to assume that what worked for you in the past will work again. It might work with diminishing returns. And there'll come a point of time when you drop off the cliff.
How do today's marketers get their hands around this and their heads around this idea of strategy?
I think today's marketeers, you have to ask yourself, there is a business strategy, there's a brand strategy, there's a channel strategy, there's a communication strategy, and there is a reputation strategy. That's what marketeers are concerned about. The trouble with the marketing function is, for long, they believe that their role is to develop just advertising. Mm-hmm. Okay, and get plaudits from people to say, wow, great done, etc. But today, marketing is far more accountable than ever in terms of strategy. I think today it's not brand versus brand which fight with each other, Suresh. It's ecosystem versus ecosystem which fight with each other. So suppose you are a food delivery company, you're fighting within your ecosystem with another ecosystem who is your competitor who's doing it. So it's not just a brand to brand fight. Okay. Next is you need to ask yourself, do I need to get education across to the consumer? Do I need to sell a product? Do I need to sell a service? Do I need to sell a solution? In a digital world, all apply. If you look at COVID and what happened, one of the highest searched categories and intensely engaged categories was beauty. People wanted to know much more about beauty. Mm-hmm. Okay. Similarly was education. So in beauty, you have to educate consumers in terms of what to do. Then you have to sell them the product for their right skin or whatever this thing. Then you need to sell them a solution or an experience where they could call in a beautician and check. Okay, so today's marketing is much more about the total solution and not just selling a product.
Going into 2023, give us the top things that marketers need to do in terms of strategic thinking to plan for this year. We've been hearing various things, funding winter, but that may apply only to startups. We've heard that this is the conserve cash year. That may apply to some kind of businesses. On other kinds of businesses, we are hearing massive layoffs are occurring. So for different businesses and different marketers, how do they view this year?
If your question is specific to India, so I would say, let's take the Indian GDP will grow around 6%, 5 to 6%. The first thing a good marketer should do is to disaggregate that growth to say, where is it happening and why is it happening? There'll be pockets of high growth. We'll get growth in the teens. Okay, 13, 14, 15. There'll be pockets of growth where you'll get double digit. There'll be pockets of degrowth where the business goes down. If you disaggregate that very quickly, then you understand what's working. Second is you need to look at your business models to say which business model is going to contribute to growth, which might not contribute to growth. And a very important question to ask is, do I ride the share of growth? The market's growing, do I get a share of that, a piece of that, or is it a share of share? A share of share in a slow growing market is the worst thing to do, Suresh. You'll end up wasting a lot of money, a lot of hard work, just not work.
And what exactly does this mean, a share of a share?
Share of share is you're competing for share, eyeball to eyeball share, you spend a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Okay, both of you end up spending a lot of money. So you reduce the revenue, you also reduce the profitability of the industry.
Are you effectively shrinking the pie instead
You're
of expanding
virtually
the pie?
absolutely right. So you really need to ask yourself, am I in the business of gaining a part of what the market growth is, or am I competing with each other to take away share? Innovation becomes extremely important when a market slows down. The reason innovation becomes important, Suresh, is that the consumer now has a new benchmark to say, hey, you know what? Times are tough, but here's a new product. Let me evaluate. Advertising and supporting your brand always works in slow times. Revenue management, you might be challenged. 40% of the business in India and FMCG might be 10 rupees and below. You need to ask yourself, what new packs can I introduce? What can I do in the area of revenue management? What do I do that? That's the kind of a toolkit which I think people should do. This is the year to do fundamental things, but do it right. And whatever you do in tough years, Suresh, never give up on quality. Consumers notice quality differences.
Don't drop that.
Absolutely. Don't drop the ball on that.
You have said 5 to 6 year GDP, 5 to 6% GDP growth this year is likely. And you also asked the rhetorical, what if it's 3 to 4%?
Yeah.
Or if it's 8 to 10%? So what if? What does that mean for marketers?
The way I see it is that every business or every brand will have or should have what I call a pessimistic plan, a realistic plan, and an optimistic plan. All the costs must be on the pessimistic plan. Everything else you can shoot for the optimistic plan. Okay? Incentives for people, etc., should be on a realistic plan. But keep your costs under control on the pessimistic plan.
Okay.
Because that's when the productivity for every dollar you spend or every rupee you spend, you'll get the maximum. So if there's a downside, you don't need to correct much because you've already built in the cost structure for that.
Okay.
The worst thing to do is have your cost structure on the optimistic plan and deliver either a realistic plan or a pessimistic plan. Okay. And a lot of people do that because they get carried away. If a business has had a good 2022, people will be very bullish. If a business has a weak 2022, they'll be very pessimistic.
Why does this happen? Are marketers living in some sort of echo chamber where they're hearing the sound of their own voices?
It's not that. I think it's psychology. Okay, so when we do well, we ascribe it to ourselves and our thinking.
And we do badly, we say market conditions.
When we do badly, we externalize. The problem is somebody else.
You've also written about ESG being a big factor, right? But on the other hand, we're hearing of Europe reopening coal plants, for instance. There's protests in Germany right now against the reopening of a coal plant. If ESG is going to be so important, the Ukraine-Russia conflict carries on and Putin decides to shut the gas off, will ESG continue to be important?
ESG will always be important. In fact, we started this journey on sustainability, Suresh, in Nokia in 2007-8, 15 years ago. Not today. Today, it's very fashionable to talk about ESG. What we did then in Nokia was, we dropped the size of the mobile phone. By dropping the size of the mobile phone, we used less paper, less trees, and more important, we took out 5,000 trucks from the road. That's the multiplier effect you get. We were the first company at that point of time to take back electronic waste. Okay, we took back electronic waste through the Nokia private dealers. We had Shahrukh advertising that, etc. When we did that, we noticed that people above the age of 40 were not bothered about ESG or sustainability. But people who are in the band 12 to 18, 20 were seriously concerned about it. So, as I would say to you, we are not inheriting the planet and what's happening from the previous generation. Okay, we are borrowing it from the next generation. So, all of us need to be careful. Your license to operate will come under severe pressure. Okay, if you're not, doing something in the area of ESG. People will ask, what is this brand doing? What is it committed to? What is this company doing? A very good example I'll give you is apparel. If you look at apparel, you'll be amazed that it's the retailers who are doing it. It's the H&Ms of this world who are saying, bring back your old clothes. I will give you 200 points or 300 points or whatever.
Are they doing this out of the goodness of their heart or because there is a solid business case behind it?
There is a business case behind it. Also, they are earning the trust of their consumers to say,
and that's part of the business case.
Because clothes is one thing, you always have more than what you need. And equally, you ask a Suresh to bring his old jeans or shirts, etc. He's by and large going to buy something new.
Correct.
So it makes business sense also. And you have established a back-end chain to say, let's do this.
So it's an undeniable reality for marketers that they have to contend with it.
The gates are shut behind you on ESG. There's no going back.
Okay, let's move from ESG to manufacturing. India has been struggling, quite frankly, to achieve some measure of success in the manufacturing ecosystem with the PLI scheme and everything else. Meanwhile, we keep hearing anecdotal reports that Vietnam is killing it in this area. So, what is Vietnam of all countries doing that we are unable to do?
Yeah, so that's a great question. For years, manufacturing has been a poor cousin to services in India.
Correct.
I believe, and I've written about this, that this year could be the start of the rebalancing where manufacturing itself becomes an equal partner or an attractive partner. Now the enablers are there. There's the PLI, there's lower taxes, there's Atmanirbhar Bharat, all the enablers are there. You cannot get more enablers than this.
Labor reform?
Labor reforms are happening everywhere, okay, across. Each state is doing its stuff and the central government is also doing stuff. So I'm not worried about that. The thing I would say about manufacturing is it takes time because it takes time to build an ecosystem. Today, for example, you have a $200 billion plus IT services export business. It started, Suresh, in 1984 with Texas in Bangalore.
In Bangalore.
In Bangalore, 1984.
Yeah, I've been.
Now we are talking 38 years. So it takes time. It takes time for the ecosystem to come. What are important things which need to happen? The first thing is we should not see manufacturing as a blue collar job anymore. It is a gray collar job. It is working with machines, but it's working with knowledge in machines. So we need to retrain and rethink that job compared to how we thought about it in the future. Okay, that's absolutely important. Second, we need to make manufacturing attractive for women and the younger generation. Okay, for example, there are some companies where women are factory managers. That's a fantastic role model, which is happening out there. The more you get there, I think the better it is. And that can only help us, it's not going to go away. Third and important, you need to automate. Our productivity is 1/4 of China and half that of Indonesia. The moment we automate, the moment we look at this whole concept as grey collar jobs, etc., it will be very different. But there's one thing which I believe that Indian industry must do more of. We take safety and the life of a human being on the factory floor or the factory premises too casually. That has to change. The day the factory manager says, any injury on the plant or anywhere in the premises of this plant is my personal accountability, that's when manufacturing will change fundamentally in terms of thinking along different lines. It will take time. India is on the right path. Okay, it will take time. It will not happen tomorrow morning.
One area where India has seen tremendous success is the creation of the digital ecosystem and the various stacks that we talked about. What can manufacturing learn from these? Is it much easier to build it on the digital side than it is to build on the manufacturing side?
I think one of the big advantages of the digital ecosystem is that it's common platforms and big and small companies all come together on the platform. So going back to the earlier question you asked me about manufacturing, I give you two good examples of countries, Germany and China. In both these countries, big companies work with small companies and they create their ecosystem which wins. We also have examples of that. For example, the
Maruti is a great example of
auto
that.
ancillary industry in Chennai is a great example of that, where big companies work with small companies and many small components of the auto industry are today manufactured in Chennai. So I think more industries and more ecosystems must adopt that model. That's when it will move
So
forward.
I'm hearing the word ecosystem quite a lot in your answers. You seem to place a great amount of value in the creation of these ecosystems. I want to talk about another ecosystem, what's called the ONDC ecosystem. For those of us who don't understand ONDC, can you tell us a quick dummy's guide to how it's going to work?
Fantastic. ONDC is the super app of the country. So what does it do? It brings all buyers, all sellers on one common platform. Today, the platforms are controlled by 2-3 people, 2-3 big brands. That won't be true anymore in the future. So suppose you are a seller. You can register on the ONDC and say, I have this to sell. I'm a buyer. I'm looking for the product you're selling. I type in, all the people who are willing to offer that product are up there for me. So it is not platform dependent. It's platform agnostic.
Okay.
It's truly open.
So if I were running one of the platforms, Amazon or Flipkart, should I be very worried about ONDC?
Let me explain that. So what does ONDC do? I, as a buyer, I find a seller who's willing to sell me whatever I'm looking for. Let's say I want to buy a pen or whatever it is. I choose that. Next, it tells me, okay, what's the delivery option you want? I get a list of people from whom I can pick it. So I've disaggregated the chain. In the past, I was stuck with the product and the delivery. That's not true anymore. So I decide on who the delivery is, and then I decide on who the payment is. While the past platform was two-dimensional, this is three-dimensional. It disaggregates it completely. But what becomes important to your question is that consumer service and offering that will be the differentiator. So it is not about big or small. The next thing I would say is combine ONDC with a new concept which the government is pushing, which is called one district, one product. Okay, there are lots of districts who have great products. This suddenly opens it up. To give you simple stats, ONDC is now available in 112 cities. There are thousands of sellers. The buyer base is already 50 to 80 million today as I speak to you. Okay. ONDC will revolutionize Indian commerce like UPI did for banking. Today, e-commerce penetration is only 7%, but it will double very, very quickly.
What will it do for marketers?
Wherever transportation costs are high and delivery costs are high, marketers need to rethink because that will come under pressure.
That's going to come under pressure.
Real prices, I believe, in some of the categories will drop. So I would say for marketers, we will learn as we go through, but the first 6 to 12 months, I would say fasten your seatbelt because none of us know how things are going to turn out. Okay, but fasten your seatbelt.
And for startups that are burning cash like there's no tomorrow, will ONDC change the game significantly for them as well?
No. I think anybody who spends money and is willing to accept a loss, hoping that tomorrow will be brighter and tomorrow that whole thing will get converted, will not happen. It just will not happen.
ONDC net positive for the startup ecosystem, net negative or net neutral?
If you are a sensible startup, it's a huge benefit for you. Okay. If you're willing to throw the money which the investors have given you behind customer acquisition costs, acquiring customers at all costs, then that's wrong.
Then ONDC or no ONDC,
it doesn't matter.
your days are numbered.
Absolutely.
We'll have to take a pause on the conversation there and pick it up again next week, where Shiv opines about the Great Resignation, leadership secrets and more. Till then, you can follow Melt on social media. The handle is Ready to Melt, or simply log on to readytomelt.com. If you'd like to follow me, I'm @Suvenk on Twitter. Goodbye and thanks for watching.